Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's good to be together this afternoon. My goodness, we are starting off with a bang. Are you going to be able to endure this whole thing? This is a lot. I'm already tired. You tired yet? You look tired. Well, I'm honored to be with you. I just talked to a friend, a new friend I met in the lobby. He was getting coffee next to me, a brother from Africa, and he saw all of this. I mean, this is crazy, this thing. And he goes, man, this is the festival of the booths. That's a preacher joke right there. I knew I had the right audience. I had the right audience for that joke. Well, 4 years ago this week, you were planning the best Easter service anyone was ever going to see. You were building sets. You had mail drops. You maybe even had animals. And then a little thing called COVID happened. And next thing you know, you are in your basement with an iPhone and a ring light. And can we all just admit at this point that those look like hostage videos? If you have not seen them lately, go back. It was bad, people. It was real bad. And they look like hostage videos because you were a hostage. It's true. And as you stared into that phone, talking, you had this sinking suspicion that this is not working. I do not know what I'm doing right now. I am not trained for this. Is anyone going to watch this? And you thought, even in your own mind, I would not watch this. Tell the truth. You knew. You're like, this is not working. This is terrible. What have we done? But you knew, don't worry, it's all going to be done by Easter. We're getting ready. We're getting ready for Easter. And then it just kept happening and happening. And collectively, we had a crisis. If you were a pastor paying any attention at all, you had a crisis. And you realized, I wonder if we have ever discipled anybody. If you did not have that crisis then, you had it a little bit later when you opened your church back up and you went, who are these people? What just happened? Where did they go? It's like people shuffled the deck somehow and you ended up with the church down the street, didn't you? Right? Am I just preaching to myself? Okay, so, and you went, what just happened? What are we doing? But you know what? Man, we can't wait till we get back to normal. God have mercy. If we did not learn the lesson that time, may God spare us another lesson. May God spare us another lesson. Surely we learned that discipling solely through a Sunday experience is not sufficient. I mean, listen, I love Sundays. I do. I really enjoy them. I love doing what we do. It's really, really fun. It's great. But surely we learned that that is not sufficient. If we did not learn it, what is it going to take to learn it, people? Surely we learned it. And surely we learned that something wasn't right, not just because of Sundays, but because, man, people didn't have very much resilience. If COVID did not teach us, surely an election or two or three will teach us that these people don't look like disciples. Some of you right now are going, oh yeah, you mean those other guys? No, I mean you. I mean all the people we've been pastoring. Surely, do not look at social media. Do not look at your church. Because you're going to learn some things about people that you thought you loved. And that you thought loved you. So what did we learn? Where do we go from here? I don't know a way that we escape our stories. We all have different stories that led us into understanding what it is to have a life with Christ and what it is to be a disciple. For me personally, I wasn't raised in church. I have no church background, none whatsoever. I came to Christ in an encounter in my room. I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit where the Spirit of God filled the room. It felt like I was breathing in warm jello and weeping for hours. It turns out, then you have to do stuff after that. And I did not know what to do. I'd never been to church. So I found the dude that took me to a Bible study a year earlier, and I said, man, I've been weeping and warm jello and the whole thing. And he said, hey, dude, well, first of all, he said, oh, I know what happened to you. And I said, what happened? He goes, you're a charismatic. And I knew it was bad. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was bad. So he took me to his church. Great church, great church. They were in their 4th year in the book of Hebrews. It was perfect for me, perfect. I had no idea what was happening, literally no idea. It was like confusing, I had no idea. Great Southern Baptist church, great people. I'm very grateful for my Southern Baptist brothers and sisters because I came to know Christ because of his witness, honestly. But the thing I remember about that, because I don't remember anything about the sermons or the worship or anything else, the thing I remember is potlucks in the basement. And I remember hugging people with sweaters. That's how I remember it. And a few weeks in, a guy out of nowhere walked up to me and said, hey, I was cleaning out my office, and I felt God speak to me, which is, it's a real thing in a church like that. And only 3 people laughed. That was this is a real thing in a church like that. And he says, and I have this tape, and I think this tape is for you. And he gives me this tape. Those of you who are a little younger, ask somebody over 45 what a tape is. And I had this tape, and I took it and put it in my car, and I listened to it on the way home. And it was a tape by a man named Dawson Trotman. And it was a tape that was called Born to Reproduce. And listening to this talk, driving home, I sat in my driveway, and I listened to this tape, and I can quite literally tell you it changed my life forever. I was forever changed. Because he made a very simple case for what maturity looks like. That we're tempted to think that maturity in making disciples is looking to be emotional, to have emotional experiences. I already had one of those. And I'm in a charismatic church where we got a lot of good emotional experiences. Like, you're in a charismatic church, by the way, if you come up and there's tissues across the front. We're expecting people to weep up here every time, right? So I remember, and it's tempting to think, man, whoever cries the most, whoever shouts the most, whoever seems the most excited or passionate, they're probably mature. But all you have to do is hang around in a church long enough to know that sometimes emotional people are just emotional. They're not necessarily mature. He says, emotion is no substitute for action. Action requires obedience. And you can tell people are growing in their discipleship journey if they become obedient followers of Jesus. It affects their calendar, affects their pocketbook. That if you don't see action come into play, you're not growing in maturity. He said, but it's possible for people to be really active, but they don't really produce anything. You ever had people in your church that do a whole lot of stuff? You ever people in your church for 10 years, but they're living the same year 10 times? They're not 10 years old in the Lord. If you don't know somebody like that, it's you. Because churches are full of that. Have you ever noticed people that do a lot of stuff, but somehow they seem to be getting worse? So he says, it can't just be action, it has to be production. It has to produce fruit in your life and in the lives of other people. That's how we know we're maturing. Our growth doesn't just affect us, but affects other people, making a difference in other people's lives. And this is probably a room full of good producers. When you end up in a room like this because you have production in your life. You don't show up here if you haven't already had some kind of ministry life that made somebody identify you, notice you. But he said that is not the sign of complete maturity. The full sign of maturity is reproduction. Healthy disciples reproduce. They reproduce. Everything that's healthy in the world reproduces, unless there's some kind of defect or brokenness. Things are supposed to reproduce, and yet too often pastors and leaders in ministry are busy doing things but not reproducing things. And as I listened to this talk, it was so exciting for me because I thought, I guess I'm just going to listen to people preach about stuff. I have no idea what they're saying the rest of my life. But I get to be a part. I get to play. It was so exciting. But then I realized I did not know how to play. I didn't know what to do. And so later I got taken to another church, a Vineyard church, which fit me a little bit more. It was really helpful. And I saw this one pastor preaching one time, and he talked about discipleship and how important discipleship was. And I'd seen all these people he trained in his life. And so I went over to him and I said, hey, tell me about discipleship. How does discipleship actually work? Like, I'd started to see some of my friends come to Christ, but I didn't know how to disciple anybody. I said, well, what would you do if you were me? How does it actually work? And he said, oh, it's way simpler than you think. I said, I need that. That's what I need. Tell me how it works. What is discipleship? And I have one slide. This is my slide. Do I have a slide? Monkey see, monkey do. That is discipleship. Monkey see, monkey do. That's discipleship. That's what he said to me, and I thought, okay. Say more about that. And by the way, I know you're going to hear a lot of good leadership stuff on this stage over this week, and they're all going to raise the ceiling of like what you believe is possible. My job is to lower the bar so you can't get under it. That's my job. Monkey see, monkey do. Notice it does not say monkey hear. It does not say monkey think. Monkey believe, monkey hope, monkey see, monkey do. He said you've got to model what you want to see in discipleship. So he said to me, he said, okay, so what do you want to see grow in disciples? I said, well, I want them to learn how to pray and have an intimate prayer life with God. And what kind of resource would you recommend? I want to see them pray for the sick and see people healed. I see that in the Bible. You know, and I want to be a biblical Christian. Ooh, that was a good one. Because apparently that's what people do. They pray for the sick and they preach the gospel. And I want to teach people to have an intimate prayer life and to learn how to pray for people. And he said, oh, man, that's so great. What a great heart. And I said, yeah, what would you recommend? And I'm thinking books, tapes, conferences, you know, because that's how I'd learned some things. And he said, oh, great. Well, all you got to do is invite them to your prayer life. I said, oh, sorry, say it one more time. I have to... I do what exactly? He says, well, when do you pray? When are you cultivating this life of prayer that you would like to see replicated in other people? And I was like, well, it's different times. It just sort of depends. And he's like, what? I'm like, oh, this is going the wrong way. And all of a sudden I realized I don't have a prayer life to invite anybody into. For some of you, this just stopped. I mean, listen, guys, if information was going to get the job done, we would have the job done. Like, there is plenty of information. There is limitless training. If information was going to get the job done, the job would be done. It would have been done a while ago. But the truth is, formation happens through modeling in connected relationships, period. And so I was like, oh, no, now I got to figure that out. If I'm going to see anything happening in anybody's life, good leaders, healthy leaders that have fruit over a lifetime, they start in the mirror. They start with their own life. Why don't we have biblically literate people? Because we don't have biblically literate pastors. Why don't we have churches that pray? We don't have pastors that know how to pray. Why don't we have evangelistic churches? Because we don't have evangelistic pastors. You know, you can learn the right techniques to get this thing going in such a way you can build a certain kind of church. There's a lot of techniques you can learn. If you're here to learn techniques, I hope you don't learn any. Any. I hope the Spirit of God convicts your heart to be the kind of leader that can reproduce my modeling from your life. I pray that happens for you this week, truly. Because if it doesn't happen, I don't know. Let's go just do something else. The scriptures are crystal clear. The scriptures are crystal clear. The model of Jesus is to build a few, that build a few, that build a few. A little Bible trivia question. When did Jesus say he finished the work? Go ahead, everybody think just for a second. You got it? How many of you thought it was the cross? The cross? You're like, I know this is a trick. I'm not raising my hand. Okay. He does. He says on the cross, I finished the work. But he says it before that too in John chapter 17. He says, I finished the work in them that through them the world might know that I am in you and you are in me. Jesus says, I'm betting the farm on these few guys. And by the way, did you ever look at those few guys? They were a mess. And he bet on them because he knew that this thing, the expression of the kingdom, happens life to life over generations. Pastors, leaders. Let me repeat what Dawson Trotman says in that tape that changed my life. Who is your man? Who is your woman? Who are you actually discipling? Who is modeling out of your life? Who is apprenticing? If you can't list those people readily and you don't easily know what they're doing, you might want to just take the rest of the day and find people. Because that's how this thing is going to change. So immediately, I realized not only did I not know how to disciple people, I wasn't sure I was being discipled. So I started looking around going, who could I just learn from? I ended up being an intern at a large church in Columbus, Ohio, home of the Ohio State University. And that's all right. I heard a few boos. That's fine. People boo on winners all the time. I get it. And I start working there. And I would do mostly, if you're an intern, that just means you do everything nobody else wants to do. I'm making copies and doing different stuff. And I would travel with him. He would travel and speak all over the place. So I'm traveling with him. He's speaking. And I was telling him on the way to this event, it was a big event, like this. I was telling him on the way to the event this story about how I'd just seen a friend of mine come to Christ. And I was telling him kind of the details of how it happened. He was like, man, that's a great story. I was like, thanks, man. It is a good story. And we get to the event, and he's up teaching, and just without any forewarning, he just looks over and goes, Jay, come on up here and tell that story. And I was like, now? He goes, yeah, come on up. I was like, oh, no. And I walk up, I'd never really stood on a stage. I'd never done any of this stuff. So I grab this microphone. I start telling the story. Well, what starts happening is people start responding, start reacting. I start loosening up. I got some new parts to this story I'd like to pepper in here. And so I start doing some things. And we get done. We go to get back in the car, and we drive back to the hotel, and he's like, man, that was great. I mean, how did that feel for you? I go, man, it felt great. That felt great. Like, man, it was great. And he's like, it was good. You did a good job. I'm like, thank you so much. Man, it felt good. It felt good. And just as we're pulling into the parking lot, the hotel, he puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, hey, I noticed something. I said, what? He said, I don't think I've ever realized how insecure you are. He said, you took a 2-minute story and turned it into a 10-minute story because you were working off of the crowd. And he says, you do not work out your needs on a crowd or as a pastor, ever. And I felt simultaneously seen and seen. It changed my life. And I could tell you literally 100 stories in a row, just like the one I just told you. See, what people need is for you to pastor them in their weaknesses, in their strengths, but that requires including people and putting them into your life. See, in a room this size, there's any number of talented people, super gifted people, but you've not had people that have seen you. And there's any number of you that are leading, and you're leading really well, but you're not really seeing people. And the hope of this gospel moves through human lives that live life together, see each other, and bless one another. And I'm just so aware the more I do ministry, how many people have never had a real pastor like that in their life. People even doing ministry, and what we do is we reproduce that which we are. There's any number of you that today, right now, well, you need to just take that to God. You start asking God, who can disciple me? I don't care if you have a church of 50, I don't care if you have a church of 5,000 or 10,000 or 10 million. You need somebody ministering into your life as a leader. And there's any number of you leading going, I'm not doing that with anybody. Please, I beg you, pull a few folks together. Start to build into their life, start to see their families, understand their life, not just their gifts, but cultivate their character, because in the end, monkey see, monkey do. People will do and be who you are, not just what you say. Can I just pray for you? Let me pray. So, Holy Spirit, we just acknowledge your presence in this room. We believe that you are speaking, you are leading, and you are moving. First of all, Lord, for those of us who have had incredible fathers and mothers in the Lord, we want to say thank you. Thank you that people spotted us. They saw us. They cut through our gifts or through the program, and they ministered to us. But there's many here that they don't have that. They feel orphaned. Spirit of God, would you increase a hunger in our hearts to be people who are seen and known, transformed by you. And may we be people that are fathers and mothers for another generation, that speak life, encouragement, blessing, and challenge, that we don't just transfer skills, we transfer your heart. Grow us up, Lord, by your Spirit. Just take 1 second and just wait. 1 second. You're going to hear a lot of people talking. Just ask God right now, what do you want me to take from these first 2 little sessions here? What do you want me to hear? What do you want me to take with me? Thank you, Lord.